Hello, please meet today's guest, Ollie James.
And when I think I was 8 years old, I started my own car cleaning business because I realized that if I could get some pocket money from my dad for washing his car, then I could probably replicate that around the village. And I remember putting a sign up, like my first ad saying it's Ollie's car cleaning business, and I put it in the church. I think we had a freestanding sort of church notice board by the village hall, and it had it's a glass and wooden cabinet thing. It shows you how far go back we go. And I remember the church warden phoning my house and asking to speak to me and telling me that it wasn't appropriate for me to put business ads into the into the church note on the church notice board. So I had my first lesson in entrepreneurship and ad placement.
What if I told you that at 8 years old, an entrepreneur got his first lesson in business ethics from a church warden who caught him advertising his car washing service on the church notice board? Today's guest, Ollie James, started that young and never stopped. From washing cars in his village to running a US-based data privacy company from Bristol, England, Ollie's journey spans multiple continents and countless lessons learned the hard way. In this episode, you'll hear how Ollie transformed from a junior employee at a Swedish affiliate marketing company into a CEO who deletes all customer data every 24 hours, not because he has to, but because it's the right thing to do. We'll explore his dark moment when he naively thought existing relationships would instantly translate to revenue, and how that near disaster taught him the real timeline of B2B sales. But here's what makes Ollie's story really compelling. He's found his forever company in Attribution, the data business he plans to run for the next 20 years. From his unique approach to privacy-first data management, to his philosophy of doing the best job possible, whether you're collecting bins or building billion-dollar businesses, this conversation is packed with hard-won wisdom for any founder navigating the complexities of modern entrepreneurship. And hello, Ollie. Thank you for being on this show.
Jothy, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be great.
First of all, can you tell us where you're originally from and then where you live now?
Well, I've always been in the UK, so I've spent a little time bouncing around. I've lived in London in my early sort of agency years, and I spent a little bit of time in North America, over in Vancouver, and back now in Bristol, England, where I have been for the last 13 years, where I've thrown down my roots, wife, kids, dogs, and running the current company, which is a US-based company, but from Bristol in England. So we do everything kind of remotely. So that's a kind of an interesting aspect of what I do.
So your start was in London then, and all those other interesting travels along the way.
Yeah. Started off in London, like work-wise, working for a company called Trade Doubler, the European affiliate network. So that's where I kind of cut my cloth straight out of university, which was in Wales, actually. So started in uni in Wales, and then that led to my first job in London, and then everything else falls into place.
There seems to be a UK theme going on right now with this podcast.
I look at it when I travel because obviously running a US business, I travel to the States a lot, and I spend a lot of time in New York. I'm actually there next week for an event called Programmatic IO, and then I'm in town for Ad Week New York. But my point was I can hear a lot of Irish within that New York accent. So I think probably the Irish are quite well understood, especially by the New Yorkers, because that influenced their accent. I mean, this is just anecdotally from what I've kind of picked up, but I think Irish over Glaswegian. I think the Glaswegian has more of a challenge potentially.
So when did your entrepreneurship part of your life, your existence begin?
I think I was 8 years old. I started my own car cleaning business.
Did you travel to people's houses with your buckets, or did you have them come and you used a hose at your house?
No, I was out with my buckets and I get my dad's bucket and his sponge. But yeah, essentially traveling around on my bicycle and getting referrals and getting other kids in the neighborhood to kind of help me out for a cut as well. So it's a few business lessons wound into that if I think back at it.
Related to your current company, you were involved with the agency world for a while, and then you were involved with, tell us about what that world was like, actually.
Yeah, I mean that. So I cut my cloth at Trade Doubler. So that's an affiliate marketing. I guess you could call them an agency. And I was there for 6 or 7 years, and that was a pan-European business. And I was a technical account manager, and I kind of developed a kind of skill set in explaining technical subjects to people that weren't necessarily very technical. And as I sort of grew up and within the business, it became sort of I used to accompany salespeople along their track and meet customers in order that salespeople didn't overpromise, should we say, on what could be delivered and when could be delivered. So that was how I kind of evolved through that business. And we exited. I say we. I was a reasonably junior person, but the businesses would exit was floated on the stock exchange, Stockholm Stock Exchange, and that was when I decided to take a bit of some time out, essentially from working, because I'd gone from school to A levels to university to then into this quite high powered. I don't say I was suffering from burnout, but I certainly wasn't ready to take the next leap with some others that were starting up businesses. So that's when I took some time out and went to sort of Canada and did some snowboarding and before I then came back to the UK to then sort of start again. But it was an interesting evolution. I learned a lot from what was I was the 13th person to join in that business, but that was in a UK team, and there were 9 other different European offices with similar sized teams. So that's where I learned how to work remotely within a team way long before we had the sort of COVID and this sort of trend to working from home. I remember the kind of spider type phones that sat in the middle of the desk, and you had email, maybe a bit of Skype, and that was the kind of tools we used. But we managed to collaborate and work very effectively together over that time, despite not being in the same physical location.
Were there things that you learned there that you were able to directly apply to when you were ready to do your own startup?
Yeah, I think I mean, Trade Double is a Swedish company, and I do very much enjoy working with the Swedes. They have a very, they're super smart, and they're able to articulate very well what it is that they want, and able to articulate whether or not you've delivered what it is that they want, all in a very kind and supportive and quite structured way. That's a kind of the culture. So I think that would be my main sort of take through. It's how you define a project brief, define a scope, and really communicate with people what it is that you expect as an outcome, and not necessarily step by step by step. So being able to communicate in a way that allows people to approach a problem their own way without you having to define each micro step, but also make sure that they don't go too much off on a tangent or waste time doing things that you weren't expecting them to do. If
So
that if
what
that
made
makes sense.
Yeah, sure. That puts a lot of trust in people to be able to figure out how to deliver what you're asking for. That makes great sense. But what was it that made you feel, to start something from scratch, you have to feel a lot of conviction that the world needs this. The world is missing this. What was driving you that there was a gap in the market or something that you felt uniquely able to fill?
Well, I mean, the precursor to me getting involved in sort of multiple startups and wanting to be in that environment is because um, I understood very quickly that I didn't like big corporate environments, and that I didn't like having to deal with a board or having to deal with lots of like minutiae of detail in terms of our governance and how I didn't much like the HR department, and I didn't much like the all the structure that's built into a bigger corporate organization. So that was when I decided, okay, fine, I want to do something. I want to do something definitely on a smaller scale with a smaller team. And looking for that problem, I kind of learned through working for other people's startups as I guess, a reasonably senior person. So I'm coming in at sort of director level based on my experiences, working for someone else's startup and then learning from that and seeing where the niches are, doing the best I can to help that business along. And when there is then a natural evolution, trying to find something smaller and smaller and smaller with another partner or with another very small group of people until I finally landed where I am today, which was kind of me and 2 or 3 other people. But based on the business we're in now is in sort of in data and identity, and that was directly the business I was involved with before, and that company has grown. So I could see what was going right, what was going wrong, how the things I would do differently. the way that I would manage the company, the way I would manage the people and the culture, and where I could see the product being able to really fly. But I basically stripped down some key products and focused on key areas. And I knew that if I focused on these things, then that was going to drive revenue, and that was going to give us, be able to give us the opportunity to tread some water and give us the opportunity to not have to go out and raise large sums of cash because we could get to revenue quickly. So I kind of learned from one thing and then moved to the next, rather than having some kind of, I wasn't sort of sat in a restaurant and suddenly a lightning bolt hit me that, wow, I've got this great idea and I can't believe that this, I've just seen a raindrop and I've thought about some new kind of like a technology that's gonna catch this raindrop and do something fabulous with it. It was always kind of a slow learned experience, and that's why I've moved through marketing and go to market and then data and programmatic and into where I am now.
I've never met an entrepreneur who would say, and everything has worked perfectly and smoothly. So, was there any kind of really difficult time so far with this which we should mention its name, right? I don't think we've mentioned its name.
Yeah, it's called attribution. Attribution, coming from my affiliate days, working out that the outcome. So you want to know what drives the sale, so you can spend more money on the activities that drive outcomes. So yeah, we just kind of merged that too. I didn't come up with the name though, I must say, and I'm not quite too sure about it. But I realized when I was brought on board that I had fires to fight and more pressing issues to look at than maybe what the name of the company was called. I'd like a new website and a new logo and all of those things, but we've parked all of that for now while I've been dealing with other issues.
So,
Which
was
was
there
to
a
your
yeah,
question.
was there a dark moment?
I think you always that's my dark moment was around getting traction and not being, I thought somewhat naively that I'd just be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm doing my own thing now. This is the offering. It is similar to X, Y, and Z from in the market that you can see. Why don't you, let's go ahead. I'll send you the contract. And I found very quickly that it takes, even if you have people that know you and that trust you and that you can articulate your value proposition to very quickly, there is still a big chunk of time in that sort of that sales process, and it can take 6 to 8 months to get to a point where you've signed a contract and then to revenue. And if you naively think you can jump straight to revenue, as I did almost instantly by all my buddies kind of coming in and working with me and being able to just LinkedIn outreach, 300 people that could buy it. My maths were, okay, well, there's going to be at least 50 people that are going to come straight back and say yes. And that it's a dark moment where you think, this isn't going to happen quite the way I planned it. And then if you don't have the cash to back that up, then you're looking at actually shutting the whole thing down before it even properly starts. So that was my kind of learning. But I wouldn't say it was dark. I was just very, very nervous at one point that actually I hadn't planned properly.
Was it self-funded all the way, or did you get some upfront?
Well, there was actually the business had customers when I joined it. It had been going a little while, and the guys that were running it had built up a customer base and some revenue. So I was lucky enough that the idea was formed. There were customers, and essentially what I was coming on board to do was to grow that in order that we didn't then have to go and get some extra revenue. So, and that's why I'm a UK CEO running a US business, was because they needed me in quickly because of a previous change of leadership team in order to get this up and running. So I think they ideally would have quite liked a US CEO in market, but you have to pay those guys way more than they pay me. But the rest of the team is actually not in the US either, even though it's a US Inc. Company. So we've got some engineering and product team in Poland and also in India. And there's myself in the UK who is kind of doing sales. And we also have a marketing external resource agency for marketing, and then the lawyers are then separate again. So I can have I've set up a few. These are some of the relationships I had to set up initially. So we can't have an in-house lawyer, obviously, but we have a little firm that specialize in data privacy, and they help us out on a kind of fee basis. So And if I want engineering done, I'm going to have to write a check to get that done. So I have to be very careful about what to ask for and to make sure that, because you can run up a bill quite heavily. And I think a lot of the people that I deal with, my sort of customers and partners, have that all in house and are much bigger. So I just have to be a bit smarter about when to deploy that revenue, that resource.
Hi there. I hope you're enjoying the show. In addition to the podcast, you might also be interested in the online program I have created for startup founders called Who Says You Can't Startup. In it, I've tried to capture everything I've learned in the course of founding and running 9 startups over 37 years, with no constraints like there were with my book, Tech Startup Toolkit. The program is 4 courses, each one about 15 video lessons, plus over 30 high-value downloadable resources. Each course individually is only $375. The QR code will take you where you can learn more. Now, back to the podcast. So it's really your show now.
Yeah. Which is kind of what I always wanted, but yeah, careful what you. It's been a very tricky transition between somebody at sort of director level, and I mean, VP sales, VP onboarding, VP, that kind of level, where you have a CEO, where you have a board, where you have another 4 or 5 people around you that are all advising you, to having to make decisions on your own. And trying to elevate yourself above the business to look down on it rather than actually getting involved in the day to day. It's like, I've used to work in an agile product team when I was at the WPP agencies, and I've been a product lead, and I know how that works, and I know how to work within that team. But I must not do that now, because I need to be out telling the story, evangelizing about the business and sales, and bringing new business and interest in. And I can't be getting too deeply involved, and that's really hard. I find that impossible. There's a big difference between running a business and being a senior person within a business, no matter what the size of that business is. That's been tricky for me.
Can you explain a little bit more about what you guys are doing with, your statement says it data is central to what you're doing, and that there's a lot of issues with data privacy. Can you kind of paint the picture for that, of how that works?
Yeah, so we've got a European business as well as a US business, and we're essentially the data provider. What I've done in previous companies has been a bit further downstream, and sort of building a platform, and people can sort of log in and they can buy audiences, and almost like, I don't know if you know, but sort of live ramp sort of style business, where they operate data marketplaces and they do private marketplace deals, and you can buy on a cost per click, all of this kind of stuff. We don't do any of that. We've taken the step upstream and become a sort of a raw data provider. So we put all of our efforts into sourcing data, cleaning data. We have an algorithm that goes through and removes any sort of duplications, and we have an algorithm that says, okay, this is a bot, or this is someone using that sits in India and is using a VPN to access Netflix in the US, for example. And there is a lot of that that's going on. So our mission is to provide a very clean, highly ethical data set to provide into that aforementioned kind of ecosystem, in order that advertisers can target an audience, a fully addressable audience. So that's the kind of shift that I made. I said, okay, I want to get really, really good at this part of that whole ecosystem when it comes to moving data through essentially the programmatic advertising industry. That's where we've had. And so the privacy side of things is probably more important now to me as a raw provider, because any problems that we have in our setup, we would then necessarily pass that downstream. And that's where one of the problems I saw previously was that, okay, we're being dumped on with data where we can't verify whether or not there's been consent. We can't verify, where it's come from, or we can't have a robust answer as to whether or not we should actually be using this or not. So I wanted to kind of solve for some of that and create that kind of gold standard of data. But there's where I'm being pulled now is that it's not just about privacy side of thing, it's about data quality, because you can have data that is fully compliant that still comes from a crappy website, or a website that's MFA, or which is made for advertising, one of those kind of websites. So what I'm looking at now is this quality scoring traffic, because we're kind of, the message is that we've got privacy baked in and we're fully compliant, that's dealt with. That's what we spent 6 months doing, cleaning up the data. And now let's start to look at the quality of it. So, you've got that it is what it sort of says on the tin. So that's where I'm kind of moving to.
And you have very different regulations on privacy from Europe. And then US is mostly a different standard, except California.
It used to be the Wild West. We used to say the States when it comes to data and privacy, but things are definitely changing. I would definitely say that because we're a US company, and I would say our biggest market is US. We apply much of what we do in the EU to the US, even though we don't sort of strictly have to. You've got obviously the US privacy regulation, California leading the way, but there are another, well, I don't know, 20 odd states that have implemented their own sort of version of that GPP. So we want to be really, really buttoned up, the most buttoned up we of anybody in the US, even when we don't necessarily have to be in certain circumstances.
It would make sense to have one standard that you use, because then it's going to be a lot easier. And if you just use the strictest standard, you're not going to ever run afoul of the states that have lower standards.
Yeah, and we delete all of our data every single day, every 24 hours. So we don't hold anything. So if you were to say to me, hey, Ollie, I need you to send me, a 30-day look back window for this audience in the US, I can't do that. I would say, okay, I can give you the data, you can store it, you keep that for 30 days, and then you'll start to see your trends. And that's one of the things from a privacy perspective, because then we minimize our risk of data leakage. If we're holding vast sums of data that go back, months or some years, some data companies can give you last year's data. It costs a lot for us to store it, but it actually costs us an awful lot to run the algos every day and rebuild this massive data set. But we took the decision to do that because we thought it was the most secure way. It will minimize the impact of a data breach if you've only got 24 hours worth of data at any one given point. And I don't think there's anybody else in the market that does that. And people think I'm mad. That must cost you a fortune to run that. Your servers must be melting on a daily basis to try and regenerate this. But that's the decision that we've made. And I think it's an interesting proposition for us, as well as, coming from a genuine desire to want to make sure that our setup is as, secure and as safe as possible.
Do you try to maintain your own data center, or do you use AWS or something like them?
Yeah, AWS is our kind of go-to, which is not the cheapest way of doing it, but if you're going to use a cloud, I think if you're going to use a cloud system, then that's the one that we researched and decided we'd move to. We had bare metal machines, and that means our own data on our own servers. So we used to rent servers, and I just think, and that can be a cheaper way of doing things. And what it means is that it used to be the only way that you could keep your data in market. So you'd have your European data in a European data center with your name, with a sticker on it with your name on the server, and you do the same in the US, and then you keep those data sets completely separate based on the geo. But you can do that now in the cloud, so there's no need to ring fence it with a physical machine. And I think it's less risky. I know these things are kept in nuclear bunkers and they're the safest things ever, but I think cloud infrastructure seems to me to be a sensible way to do things. And it also helps me with my relationship with Amazon, because I want to have a good relationship with them. They just launched their DSP, and so I think being one of their customers allows me to access the open marketplace, and et cetera, et cetera. Although I'm sure that some other cloud providers are available. I don't know, maybe I've just succumbed to all the advertising and the media press, but I've not seen anyone.
You're actually right. Most of my startups, not most, but at least 4 of my startups have been cybersecurity. So I can tell you you're right. And the reason that it's really, the argument for why you're right is really easy to make. So think about people who run a corporation that does, I don't know, pick one, pharmaceuticals. Okay. Are they really an expert at data security? I don't think so. And so, any industry you pick, yeah, you can hire good IT people, but guess who hires the best IT people? The cloud people, because they've got everything to lose, because they can't afford the PR of having a big problem occur. And so they're really good at it. So you can be safe. You can feel you're safe.
That would be almost terminal, I guess, for their business if they had a breach. Someone like Amazon.
Back to your company that you're growing, and what does success look like for you personally? I mean, in terms of your business, in terms of, but just in, sort of life.
It changes. I mean, I always wanted to do the I had it sort of drummed into me that whatever it is that you're doing, do the best job that you possibly can do. Okay, so my dad got me a job. He used to work for local government, and he walked into his buddy's office that ran the technical services department. He's like, "Hey, Ollie's back home from university. He's driving me mad. He needs a job." So the guy's like, "Yeah, I need a refuse collector, a bin man, dustman, we call them in the UK." So I spent, holiday after holiday going around collecting up the rubbish and throwing it on the back of the lorry. But my mindset for that was the same as it is now. So I wanted to be the best goddamn bin man that there was. And I used to run ahead of the lorry and grab all the rubbish and make piles and then run around and throw all the rubbish in from the piles. I thought that was maybe a more efficient way of doing things than just going from house to house. And we used to call it bagging up. So you would go and bag up a street, and then the lorry would come and you throw it all on because we thought we could get it. We used to run and used to hang on the back of the bin lorry from street to street rather than going and getting into the cab because we thought we could save time. I mean, you can't do these things now, right? I mean, you have like proper mechanical bin loaders, and you get arrested if they saw you hanging onto the back of a lorry driving down the highway. But these are the things we used to do, but all in the name of efficiency and doing things better. But I digress. That's basically the ethos. The success for me is looking back, regardless of whether the outcome is whether or not we do the job as best that we possibly can do, and that we put the effort in, and we tried our best to get the outcome rather than. So it's about the kind of the journey and the doing rather than the outcomes. And I know most people are looking at outcomes and revenue and market share and all of these other things, but I think if you certainly for me, it's paid off is to look at the task in hand and go, what's the best way of doing this? And if you can put your hand on your heart and say that's how you do it, then that's what success looks like for me.
Do you think you'll keep running this business, keep growing it like for a long time, maybe till you retire? Or do you see yourself selling it to somebody? What about?
I'd love to be in it for the long haul, which is the first time I think I can say that. I'd love to still be running it in 20 years' time. I'd love to see us grow in the States and grow a European business. I've never worked for a company in Asia. I'd love to look at that sort of that Asian market. I don't know anything about it. I look forward to working with somebody who can help me, maybe out of Singapore, look at then at Japan and Australia and that sort of thing. So and this for me, because it's a data business, it's a global business. And I'd really like when we've cracked the US, and I'm loving my US focus, don't get me wrong, but when this is big enough and when I can hire people in market, kind of when I've got a GM and a sales guy and some onboarding capability, customer onboarding capabilities in the US, then I might look to do something else and to do the same thing in another market. And that's really exciting, but that's at least a 10-year plan. And why not? Why I think I've found my home. Perhaps it'd be difficult for someone to very hard to drag me away from this. I'm not sure what you could offer me for me to say, okay, I'm going to ditch this and move. I don't think there's not a sum or
Are you
I don't
doing? Do you
think
think you're?
anyway.
Are you? Do you think about and do you focus at all on making sure you have a good work-life balance?
Yeah, I try because because I'm in the UK and I work in predominantly a kind of US time zone. It leaves me with a little bit of time in the morning. I do the school run. I go to the gym. If my kid's playing rugby, I'll go to his rugby match or his hockey match or see his school play or walk my dogs because I know that it could be 10 p.m. before I don't really get into, I'm not a kind of a Netflix kind of show watching, kind of binge watching kind of guy. So I don't do those kind of things that might otherwise take up lots of other people's time. So therefore I work. I mean, I work a lot, but I find time because of the time difference is that it enables me to pop up, as I say, at a sports match or
But
go
your
to the
your
gym.
dinner time is a particularly difficult time for you to get away, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fun. We're quite informal as a family in terms of it's not, I mean, I will be at the dinner table when I need to be. I take some medication I'm type 2 diabetes. So I take some medication for my diabetes, which kind of suppresses appetite. So I'm often kind of not hungry at certain times. So we have a very kind of fluid, I don't necessarily, meal times at my house aren't very like traditional mom and dad sat there and the dogs in their beds kind of thing. That is quite a fluid. I might breeze in and grab something and eat it standing up and then say hello and fleet off somewhere. But I make that up with, I tend not to work weekends. So they tend to be very, well, my eldest son plays sports on the weekend. So on a Saturday, so does my youngest actually on Sunday. So that's when they kind of get that back.
My grandson was 6. He's now 8 when he was first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And he's not yet old enough to manage it himself, but I think he's going to get there probably within the next couple of years. Hey, I have
Yeah.
one last question for you.
Okay.
So grit, it's something that all startup people have. It's just it's like a law of the universe. Everyone who's doing startups has grit. And what's your grit story? Where, because you started talking about being an entrepreneur and doing something on your own without anybody, suggesting it. You just did it when you were 8, and then you've done a whole bunch more. So where do you think it comes from?
My grit story. I think probably that it comes from school. I guess there was a lot. I mean, I've always struggled with my weight, so that which is part of like the reason that led to my kind of my diagnosis of diabetes. So I was, clinically obese, and I was heavy at school. Had been my sort of weight has fluctuated up and down. So I got on the kind of receiving end of some interesting feedback when I was at school. And I think kind of being able to kind of channel that and deal with that and be the kind of champion for other kids that weren't the cool kids and that weren't the and that had their challenges as well was probably what kind of set me up to be able to cope with whatever kind of life threw at me. And that would be, I was one of the kids. I didn't do sports day, but in year 8. I was one of the only like kids in the lower school that got a lead part in the school play, right? Because I could sing. So, which again was so that kind of, I was like, yeah, I can't do these things that everybody's doing and is championing, but I can actually do this. And it was actually kind of showed me that you can find your way, you can reach your goals if you kind of put your mind to it and block out some of that noise.
It's kind of like, so I've had some interesting conversations with my grandson. His name is Warner. Um, because, I mean, he's known me, of course, his entire life. And so he's well aware of my physical disability, not having a leg. And so, and then I wrote a book about it. That's the book I'm going to be sending to you. Well, in addition to that one for your 10-year-old. And
Fantastic.
he loves that book because it talks about these are animals. There's some pictures of them up on the wall there. That's from the book that have a challenge, a physical challenge. I didn't include diabetes in the book. I could have, I suppose. I made ones that were a little bit more obvious and visible, just because I thought that would be easier for the 4 to 9-year-old age range. It's really helped him to think of what he has as a disability. It is a physical disability. It's just not visible to people. But all of the same kind of issues exist. It puts constraints on him. He has to be watching his diet. He has to be watching the timing of when he eats certain things and all of that. He is very active physically. He's playing sports, which is cool, but he has to be careful. And I think what it's doing to him, and we're all seeing this, is that he's very smart, like really smart. And he's leveraging that. He's emphasizing that. He's focused on those sorts of activities. It's really cool to watch.
Yeah, it takes all sorts, but yeah, I think that if you have some adversity, it kind of pushes you down to find to find what it is that you're really good at and you enjoy. And we're not all made of the same mold, and takes all sorts. I think that's certainly true of your startups. You need some differing personalities. You need people that challenge your ideas, and that's why I think diversity and inclusion is so important when it comes to startups. I mean, I always have sort of run a meritocracy. I'm like, okay, you hire the best person for the job, you promote the best people, but if you can, that often comes through some sort of diversity, whether that's neuro or whether that's physical or whether that's with race, color, creed, educational background, we're all kind of, we're individuals at the end of the day. So I guess there's diversity baked in, regardless of, if there's two people, then those two people are necessarily have to be very different, even if they're twins. But that certainly helped over the years. So working for Trade Doubler with that European colleagues in European offices and different cultures coming together has certainly helped me understand how important that is, and see how effective it is.
So Harvard Business School did a very comprehensive study of the success of diverse teams versus homogeneous teams, and 75% better decision making. And there's a whole criteria for how they decided that for diverse team.
Yeah, I think they'll be the ones that win.
Well, listen, Ollie, this has been really fun. With your travels to the US, if you ever find yourself in Boston, I hope you'll let me know.
I'd love to come to Boston.
I'll take you to my favorite. Do you like oysters?
Hell yes.
Okay. There is we have the most amazing oyster place in Boston on the North End. So please let me know. Anyway, this has been great, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and good luck with your company.
Thank you so much. And Thea, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And here's your Startup Founder Toolkit. Number 1, revenue timelines are longer than you think. Even with warm relationships and a proven value proposition, B2B sales cycles typically take 6 to 8 months from first contact to signed contract to actual revenue. Don't make Ollie's mistake of assuming your network will immediately convert. Plan your runway accordingly and expect the long game, even with friendly prospects. Number 2, choose your constraints strategically. Ollie deletes all customer data every 24 hours, not because regulations require it, but because it reduces risk and differentiates his company. Sometimes the most expensive operational choice becomes your competitive advantage. Ask yourself, what constraint could you voluntarily adopt that would force innovation and set you apart from competitors? Number 3, focus upstream for cleaner business models. Instead of building another platform downstream, Ollie moved upstream to become a raw data provider. This eliminated complex marketplace dynamics and allowed him to focus on doing one thing exceptionally well. When you're evaluating your market position, consider whether moving earlier in the value chain could simplify your business model and strengthen your competitive moat. That is our show with Ollie. The show notes contain useful resources and links. Please follow and rate us at podchaser.com/designing successful startups. Also, please share and like us on your social media channels. This is Jothy Rosenberg saying, TTFN, ta-ta for now.